What's the need that faces us in terms of training pastors for ministry in the UK today?
It's great, Chris. It's a great need. It's a need across many aspects of pastoral ministry in the life of the local church. I think we need people who are equipped with basic technical skills, Bible handling, an appreciation of communicating from the Bible into the context of culture. Those are skills that we need. I think we need pastors and teachers who are relatable as individuals, not 6 foot above contradiction, among the people, serving the people, growing with the people as they teach and preach and pastor and care. So an all-round ministry, really, I think, is one of the great needs. Less specialists, more folks who can mix and match and trade in different requirements for ministry. Because we're often leading congregations of great, cultural diversity, and also from different sort of educational backgrounds too. So I think our pastors in the contemporary context need a good all-round shaping, formation of character, plus the technical skill set that one would hope would come in terms of competence of the Bible handling skills, and then this is almost a difficult thing to define. This capacity to find your voice as a pastor in ministry that is relevant and appropriate to the people you're serving and the community that you're trying to engage with.
Right. Given this need, I really want to have this conversation about training from a pastor's perspective. Yeah. So we're here at Lansdowne Church, and I'm with Peter Baker. My name's Chris Sinkinson. And in this video, we're going to talk a little about how we are training pastors, how we develop pastors, and in particular, we're going to think in terms of the School for Discipleship and how that can fit as a route into ministry. Peter, can we talk about the routes into ministry and just reflect a little bit on your background? Yep. So you've been in ministry for many years. Now, what was your route into ministry in terms of training?
Yeah, long time in ministry, 40 plus years now, Chris. I did a classic sort of couple of years in a Bible college, and then had the privilege of serving with David Jackman at Above Bar in Southampton for 5 and a bit years. That's where really ministry took on its definitions for me, as I understood how teaching the word applied to a congregation and the development of a church's strategic vision and mission in a context. So I work with and observe David's style and ministry expertise, and then I went for the first time to my own senior pastoral role in a church in Romford in Essex. And then after 6 years there, we ended up, which for us was back home, as a family in Cardiff in Wales, and I served on the staff in Highfields for nearly 19 years. So yeah, a broad perspective, different kinds of churches. I mean, independent, evangelical, Bible-loving, Jesus-loving churches.
Yeah, good. So in terms of the on-the-job kind of training, what are some of the key kind of areas and skills and so on that you really needed to develop, particularly in those first few years when you were on the job learning those skills?
I think in terms of the technicalities around preaching, communicating. For me, the model was expositional ministry, with a bit of thematic preaching from time to time. So learning the trade in terms of going through a book of the Bible by observing how a skilled practitioner like David delivered that to a context. I think that's the other thing. It's the passage or the text into a context which you then deliver to a congregation. So those kinds of skill sets, I think, as a part of the development, as a pastor, that is, you learn how to take truth and walk it with you into your congregational life. So it's not simply a kind of I'll preach to them, but you model hopefully your preaching and your values as you serve and love and care for a congregation. For me as a young guy, I was 23, I think, when I started with David. It was also seeing how church worked from the way in which the structures and the operation and the decisions were delivered in a visionary, strategic way. So the teaching ministry, Chris, has to be allied to personal formation, godliness. So we watch our life as well as our doctrine. as pastor teachers. But also then it's how you deliver the core biblical message into a living community week to week as you serve them. And as you develop with them the sense of the congregation's calling to communicate, to relate to, and to bring the gospel to a different context. So Southampton was very different from Romford, Essex, was very different from Cardiff, is very different from Lansdowne, Bournemouth. And all the while, as a pastor teacher, I think you're learning about the application of biblical values, our doctrine, to our mission as a church. And that will take different shape according to geography, demographic of the congregation, the location. All of these things are part of the interplay between the platform, pulpit, ministry, people, and the development of a vision.
It's interesting because the content, which is really important for us, we want to have good theology, good sound understanding of the Bible. The content is the one side, but the other side to what we're trying to do is give people the skills to understand the times. That's the great expression, is it? To understand the times we're living in and how it applies and how to communicate. Because presumably in the different settings where you've been, the style of communication has to maybe shift a little. And the period we're living in, I mean, over the years, the styles of communication change. Sure. I was under David a little bit when I was in Southampton as a student there, and David's ministry, great. I would say, in terms of the kind of values that David modelled there and the way that he handled the Bible, those would be very influential on me, the values. Content-wise, of course, we want it to be sound, but we've got to keep agile in terms of how we see the way we communicate, the style changing over time. Have you noticed that in your own ministry, how the style has changed and developed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I describe it as finding your voice. So you have an organic, native to the person. Lloyd Jones used to say that preaching is truth through personality. And I think for me, I use that expression, finding your voice. And my voice here in Bournemouth is the same but different from the voice that I developed in Cardiff. The truth is the same. It's the way that you deliver it in context has to be flexed, and you pivot. It also, from my point of view, is part of the maturing of a pastor teacher. Your speaking, teaching gift hopefully continues to develop. And yes, you talked about the cultural moments that we're in, and they vary from decade to decade. And I think part of the skill set of an effective preacher, teacher, communicator is that you read the room that you're preaching to in the context of the bigger room of your society. And I think that maybe we in our even independent evangelical traditions have still a lot to learn about how we find our voice within all of that. So for me, that's an ongoing work in progress.
Yeah, and it will be ongoing all through our ministry, which is one of the reasons why I'm quite excited about the intern style of training, an apprenticeship kind of model. Because one of the dangers of a classroom style is that you are likely to be taught by people who are doing it most, like 10 years earlier or whatever. So, or they learned skills 20 years earlier. In a living church environment, it's got to work there and then. We need to know this is the way that we're communicating now. And so I love the idea in an internship of the apprenticeship style. Just reflecting again on the kind of like, as the years have gone by, what do you think are some of the challenges today on somebody as a pastor in pastoral ministry that are different than the challenges? How many years ago can I go here? 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
40 years ago.
Let's say 40 years ago. What would be the differences?
I think the expectations on us are greater for a level of competence across so many skill sets. Back in the day, I think the expectation was if he preaches a half-good sermon on a Sunday, he's able to visit me when I'm in hospital, I'll give him a pass on everything else. But over the years, I've noticed how inevitably the requirements of the elder, the pastor teacher, within a plurality of church leaders, means that you have to be conversant with, budgets and finance and financial sort of, extrapolations. You have to be a fundraiser. You have to be a strategic thinker and visionary. And much of this we don't actually get trained for in a Bible college context. So besides the unique value of an internship in the field, in the local church that School for Discipleship offers, besides that, I think what we've got to learn as pastors is that the development of our ministry skill sets now has to keep bearing in mind the broader requirements. So I look back to my early years in ministry in Romford, Essex, and it was fairly standard stuff. You preached, you pastored, you chaired the leadership meeting, and you basically encourage people to keep following Jesus. Well, that's still in play, but there's a level of sophistication or nuance now to leadership as a pastor teacher with others that requires very different skill sets. Managing people, all the governance stuff. Now, how that package of realities actually meshes with a one-year intern program is not, maybe not relevant. Where I think the relevance is our investment in people coming on the SFD program as interns, apprentices, our investment in them at the age in which they come to us, or the experience level, probably better, where they join the program. Investing in people in those early days of their formation about ministry, about skill sets, about the way that what they're learning relates to the real world of church. I think that's really valuable for them, so that people like me and you can share, from what didn't work, from the mistakes that we made over the years, and continue still to learn from our mistakes. And I think that if we can get our hands on some really passionate people who want to be shaped for ministry for the long term, because for me, Chris, this is about building not just capacity but ministry resilience into people for the long haul. That would be a great blessing on them if we can commit to passing on some of the stuff that God has blessed us with over many years now, in our case, and helping folks get healthy expectations for church ministry based not upon simply classroom lecture, but on the field, in the church experience, where you can sharpen your skill sets. And it's about the match of those skills with the actual people that you're serving. You have to bring those two together. You can't afford to have a kind of a theory that doesn't work in practice. So sometimes the theory has to be significantly changed to reflect the realities that you're dealing with day to day.
Yeah, I love your expression there. We need to be able to pivot, because there is that sense in which we've got to read the times that we're in and see what's going to work in this situation. And that leads me to want to just pick up on something you said. And actually, I will wind the clock back a bit here, because I love the way you describe the need for people with passion for this. We are looking for people who don't just tick some boxes of a skill set, but we do want a passion for the Lord Jesus and a motivation for ministry. So turning the clock back, we used to talk about, I don't hear it so much now anyway, but we used to talk about calling. Does somebody feel called to ministry? When did you receive your call, you might be asked? That's how I remember things in the early days of ministry. We don't hear that expression much anymore. What do you think of it? Would you use the term calling?
Absolutely. I think we've lost a lot in losing a sense of vocation that I think is behind the idea of calling. This is a vocation. God has called me into this. And so while competence is really important, those skill sets around Bible handling and executing a good talk, that competency is important. Chemistry is important, so that we're people who work with other people, with team players. I think this other C here, this idea of calling, is crucial on many levels. One is if you're not called into pastoral ministry, you're going to be found out within the first couple of years. If you are simply here because it's a way of, having a job to do and filling your working week, then you'll be exposed by the sheer pressure sometimes of ministry. And I think too, if you're not called to ministry, then you will struggle to develop the resilience that is required, the perseverance, the steadfastness, the endurance that Paul talks about to Timothy. Hard work. So the work of an evangelist, allied to hard work. And I think without a sense of calling, and that is reflected sometimes in passion, I think that many of us will just throw in the towel. Because it's hard yards, and it's not like a job that you can clock off from at 5 o'clock. Now there are dangers. Of course, there are dangers to all of that emphasis on a vocation that is all-embracing and all-encompassing. We do need work-life balance, and I don't think I've always got it right. But at the heart of my sense of who I am is my commitment to Christ that for me is expressed in my calling to serve the church. I am basically, that's all, in a sense, it's all I am, is a servant of the local church for Jesus' sake. But I'm passionate about that because I do believe in the mantra that the local church is the hope of the world. And so we need people who are passionate about that vision for local church and therefore called to it. If you're not called to it, stay out. I want to work with people who are passionately called to ministry and who are not unmindful of the need for careful emotional health checks and all those gauges. But ultimately, they are willing to sacrifice for the sake of Christ because they feel called. I mean, Paul talks about that concept, doesn't he, about being constrained, like being in a vice. I can do no other. I must preach the gospel. It's that sense of calling that I'm not on about a prophetic Old Testament, call. I'm on about a sense of God laying hold on people and saying, come on, this is how I want you to play your part in the advance of the kingdom. Now, there's room for all. But I think those of us who are in ministry full time on the coalface need to be fundamentally called to that. There are many gifted people who can handle the Bible well in front of a large crowd. Doesn't always mean they have a call to ministry. They have a call to that particular gifting.
Yeah, it is so helpful, and the recognition of the need for perseverance in ministry, where we know that over the years there can be many reasons why we might want to throw in the towel, but deep down that sense that God has got us here. This is God's hand on us. Certainly for me, that's been a fundamental kind of motivation. Because people can let us down, or we can we let ourselves down. I mean, it's not just others.
Well, it's both, isn't it? You're right. The storms of ministry, the storms of life, the pressure points, the opposition, the sheer volume of expectation that comes at you. It would be very easy sometimes to want a quiet life. That is well paid and that finishes kind of thing at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday evening.
Sounds very appealing.
That's not ministry, is it?
No, that's right. Okay, so maybe on another video we'll talk a little bit more about the resilience thing, building resilience, because I think there's a whole load of issues there for ministry generally and for pastors that we can talk more about. But let's just finish with this point, and let me pitch the question to you. Let's say I'm interested in ministry. I'm thinking about school for discipleship, maybe pastor, maybe something else, but I'm thinking in terms of pastoral ministry and to some extent. How do I know if I'm called? How do I know?
Well, I think that's a beautiful way into the answer, isn't it? Part of establishing or working through that sense of calling, in my view, is to come and put yourself into a program of internship in a place like Lansdowne with a school for discipleship syllabus that is about formation of character, that is about developing skill sets, competency, that is about healthy expectations being set for ministry for the long term. Come and find out how God has wired you up, the sense in which the early calling from God can be shaped, can be examined in the real world. A sense of calling is not really tested in Bible college, apart from getting through Greek or Hebrew. Have I got the stamina to get through, biblical languages? Real calling, I think, is tested in the context of the church ministry. And I will also say this, Chris, folks who are coming onto SFD, I would hope are already beginning to express their sense of interest in and serving the local church in a variety of ways. Now we're all at different stages, but I would be hopeful that people who are attracted by the prospect of the course are already giving early warning signs, or early positive, healthy warning signs of wanting to get involved and wanting to serve, wanting to grow, wanting to develop, wanting to learn some skill sets from people who are further down the tracks, who can. And I've always believed that in some respects, if you can put yourself in the best way under gifted people who can model for you godly character, resilience in ministry, competency in terms of skills required, I think that is a great blessing to watch, observe gifted people who are not pointing to themselves but Jesus. You can learn. I learned an awful lot from very key leaders in my life.
Yeah. Great, and this is what School for Discipleship is going to provide a platform for as well. Not only with Lansdowne, actually, because we're offering this more widely with other churches too. So there may be other churches where an intern may be serving alongside another pastor or youth worker or evangelist or whatever at another location and coming to us for the study program. So the opportunities SFD represents for people to test that calling, I think, is really important. Thank you so much, Peter. I think we've got some more material here we might want to take further in terms of calling as well. Whether you call it conviction or calling, exploring an application to School for Discipleship, exploring an application to the program we're running might itself be a helpful process for somebody to be able to talk to other people, get some advice, get some other opinion. And that's a key way in which we can discern whether God's call is on our lives. So thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Chris.
For your time this morning.
Look forward to next time.
Thank you.